It's not going. My finger must be too cold.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, well, I don't know how it's going to go there. Go live now. Let's see what happens. We are still trying to set up our cameras with everybody as we're coming to you live. Kate is going to try and work all our other angles. So we'll see what happens here. But we are excited to join you tonight. And
what do you think? On Monday Night Live.
Monday Night Live. We are struggling with one of our feeds over here. And it's just not working for us tonight. So we will have to let that go.
Yeah, I'm just gonna have to surrender that one.
And surrender that, hopefully, to the universe and
so I think that was your personal Facebook page,
it was.
Dean. So if you're watching this later on Dean's page, because I will share it to his page for him, that's what I do. Sorry we didn't get you live, but you're still going to get the content.
Right, right. And hopefully, I was just thinking maybe we were live on the other one during the whole time we were setting up. That could be good. Who knows?
Oh.
So as we come to you live tonight, we are excited to join you. We want to really jump into our topics tonight and to really learn from one another and learn what has been going on. But I feel like we've got to keep going. Are we on? We're good. I feel
Facebook's
so confused.
on, Instagram's on, my Facebook page is on, and YouTube is
going.
So we're just missing yours.
So, well, thank you everybody for joining us live tonight. The topic that we wanted to cover tonight is really about use your voice.
Yes, yes, yes. As everybody knows, if you don't know, and you've been in America for the last few months, it's election time.
It is.
If you didn't know it. Hi, Christine. And so we thought that this time of year right now is a really good time to just revisit that idea of making sure that your voice is heard, how to make sure that you can really contribute to your community and our nation and everything else by voting and using your voice.
Using your voice. And as we struggle, one of the things that is so important to us is we don't feel heard enough.
Yes.
And there's a lot of times in our lives we're not feeling heard or valued. And so one of the things that's been so intriguing to me is how many people I've been running into that have been saying I'm a first-time voter.
Oh, yes.
And that has been really, really shocking to me to see how many of us have felt as though our voice didn't count for so long, that we really haven't used our voice and we really haven't voted.
Yeah. And I really love that you brought that up, because not only is it people that could potentially have been voting for a while, but then we also have the brand new young adults who now can vote for the very first time,
right,
in their life so far. And so all of that wrapped together still brings home your point of, hey, I'm not really so sure if my voice is actually heard. And I felt that way in elections past, like with the Electoral College and just the way that it goes. And if you live in a state that's predominantly usually goes one way or the other, then oftentimes if your views are maybe a little bit different, you feel like it doesn't matter if you vote.
Right.
But that could not be farther from the truth.
It isn't, in the sense that we have a couple different levels here. Like on one level, we hear a lot of people saying, well, on a national level, on the global president's election, for example, we don't have the ability to be heard because we have a small electoral college votes here in Utah, et cetera, et cetera. But the interesting thing about it is that we don't think beyond just the presidential vote.
Right.
We have to recognize that there's a lot going on locally in your communities. And a lot of people are upset and not happy with the way things are going in their communities. And or maybe they are very happy with what's going on in their communities.
Yeah, I want to keep it basically the same.
Keep it going.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have this opportunity. You have this opportunity to use your voice and to really speak out and speak up. And get out and use your voting voice in our communities. It's not just about the presidential election. And so going back and kind of looping it back to being heard and your voice being heard in life. One of the things that we don't do is we don't stick up for ourselves enough. We don't stand up for ourselves. And we get frustrated when we aren't heard. We get frustrated when we aren't being listened to. But at the same turn of the coin, what are we doing? What are we doing to allow our voices to be heard? And are we looking for ways to express ourselves? Are we looking for ways to be heard?
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of what's going through my mind really plays into what you're saying, and still talking about the opportunity that we have to cast a vote and be part of this year's election is, energetically speaking, whether or not you feel like your vote matters or that your voice is actually heard, just by doing it, by participating in it, really does put out to you, if nobody else, that you're telling yourself that you can speak up for what you want.
Right.
And therefore, in all the other areas in your life where you feel like you're not heard or that your voice isn't important, this is something that's coming across our couch a lot lately, you guys, that feeling of I matter, right? Like my voice matters, I'm important, people hear me. And so it's the opposite that we're dealing with, right? People feel like they aren't heard, that they don't matter, that nobody can hear them, and what they have to say isn't important, all of those sorts of things. So doing the things like getting out and voting and speaking your mind, even though you may just be that one little pin drop in the big bucket of your state or your community or whatever, but just energetically, that's going to give you more confidence to put that into the other areas in your life.
Yes. And being able to also get involved. And this is another area that we struggle with, is getting involved in our communities and really understanding what the issues are that are going on around us. One of the things that we find, I find in my coaching sessions, is a lot of times we're unhappy with the way things are going in our relationships, or unhappy with the way things are going in our lives. But we're not opening up a conversation. We're not opening up a dialogue to really identify what is happening and what is going on. And because we're not opening up that dialogue, because we're not really investigating and getting clear on what the issues are, nothing ever gets resolved.
Right.
And because you're not saying anything about what's not getting resolved, and others aren't saying anything about what's not getting resolved, we don't move forward with it.
We stay stuck.
So we've got to get involved in our communities and start to see what's going on around us and what are the different pieces. I do think it was interesting this year because I did have the opportunity to vote already, and I was super stoked to be able to do that. But to be able to go through,
I wish you were wearing a sticker, Dean.
I should wear I voted stickers. But one of the things that was interesting is how much there's a lack of information around some of the things that are on the ballots, because there's a lot of amendments and a lot of changes to the Constitution here in Utah's Constitution that they're wanting made. And to find the information and to have a discussion is really important in our communities. And it reminded me a lot of what goes on in our homes and what goes on in our lives, where there's a lot of changes that we want, but we don't know what the issues really are. We aren't really clear about them.
Yeah.
And so we don't really talk about them. And so our voice isn't heard because we're not aware of what the issues are.
Right. And could spend so much time trying to solve and resolve something that isn't really part of the issue.
Right.
That could just be kind of, what's that word? I'm probably going to say it wrong. A moot point?
Mute. Yeah.
Mute point.
Yeah, a mute point.
Maybe it's a moot point.
Moot
for cows.
Mute.
It's a moot.
Yeah, I guess
point.
tomato. I think it's good either way.
Right. And so I completely agree. Like getting really clear on what actually is being executed, what needs some new, resolution or solution seeking after, and then going after and getting educated and becoming really familiar about the topic and where it is that you reside too.
Right.
Like, I think that's another part, is so often we just kind of hear all the different opinions and we don't really take time to really see where it is that we actually feel is right and true for us. Yeah. Once again, we're talking election a lot here, but I love that you keep bringing it back into relationships, in our family dynamics, in our coworkers, in our friendships. And Zach's funny.
I got a comment. Make voting great again.
Big Zach with
There you
lots
go.
of fire afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, make it hot. So, but I love that. I love that idea of taking the concept, and we're always trying to do that too on our podcast and here. Like, even though we may be talking about the voting, but being able to apply the principles and the action items and things to all the different areas of our life where we would need to use our voice.
Right. And that's one of the pieces too that I think we struggle with is having a civil conversation. And so a lot of people don't really get out and communicate about politics. That's the one thing I keep hearing over and over and over is I don't like to talk about politics, or I don't like politics. And a lot of the reason that we speak to that and speak that way is because we don't like conflict.
Right.
We don't like the fact that we're not on the same page or that we see things differently. We're also in a situation nowadays in our community where people expressing their views gets mocked or criticized, or they get kind of trolled on media, etc. And the reality is it's just an opinion. And we need to be able to have different views and different opinions, and tying it back to the family, tying it back to the dynamics that we're always dealing with it's like I see it a lot with siblings and families. And so I look at my siblings and my family and how different our views of our family are, and how different our views of our upbringing, and how different our views are. And so we don't want to talk about it. And if nobody talks about it because we're afraid our view will be criticized or not accepted, it's the same thing on a political level. We're getting to a situation where we're all in the same family, but none of us want to talk about it because it makes other people uncomfortable, or we might get attacked, or we might be criticized for who we choose to support. And that's one of the other reasons why we don't let our voice be heard. Instead, we need to be speaking up, and we need to be sharing how we feel regardless of what other people think.
Yeah. And so, Dean, I think part of the resolution for this is getting to a place in yourself and gaining enough communication skills where you can have those conversations without anybody personalizing it. Like, those are my favorite kind of conversations to have there. You guys know this though. We've talked about this a lot. Like, I'm a communication junkie. I just love it. I want to talk about it. I want to talk about all of it. Let's do it. I'm in, right? And yet there is a lot of fear oftentimes around that. All the things that you've just already spoken to, right? Like that I will be misunderstood, that my words will be twisted on me, and that I'll be like blown up. All of the things, right? When reality is that you can have someone that you love very, very much, and you can have completely different belief systems and everything else about whatever topic that you want to talk about, and still be able to come to some sort of, at least we can agree to disagree and still love each other, right? In a civilized manner, so that everyone can feel like their voice is heard.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I know we've talked about this in other forms and other formats and in other ways, but the reality is that there is no greater time in our nation where people are finally involved and engaged in dialogue. Whether we like how it's played itself out, whether we like the things that are being said or not said, this is probably one of the first times in my experience in all the years that I've been around that I've seen people more politically engaged and politically involved than ever before. And all the fence sitters are finally getting off the fence. All the people that feel like, well, hey, I'm a first-time voter. That to me is really remarkable. And I think it's amazing that we're getting out and voting. And the reality of it is something that's very near and dear to my heart. Growing up in the environment I grew up in, my family was a very, with the last name Nixon, I mean, people, you got to expect we're going to be politically involved and politically minded. So from an early age, being involved in that political system and understanding the importance of it, it also really taught me growing up through that process that it's okay for everybody to have a different point of view and a different voice. The one thing that it's important for us to do is to listen. Like we've talked about with other pieces and other things that we've been working on this year, is we have to be able to listen. We want people to hear our voice. We want to be heard. We encourage that we're heard. But are we listening in it as well? Because in order for me to be heard, I really have to be listening.
Yes.
Because my reactions and my responses are all going to be based upon what I'm hearing. So, like you said, sometimes we're saying the same thing and it's a moot point.
Right.
And that's a part of what the process is people are going, well, I'm not heard and I don't have a voice. Well, the question is, are you listening?
Yes.
Are you listening and are you hearing so that you can have a dialogue? And we've talked about this on podcasts and webisodes. Is most people don't listen to hear.
Right.
They listen to react or to respond. And this is where I think we break down, especially in our political arena, is people don't listen to hear, they listen to respond and defend their position and to stand their position and to, kind of pound their fist. That's the area that we've got to slow down. That's the area we have to step back and we have to go, no, I need to listen so that I can hear what my loved ones and people around me are saying.
Absolutely.
So I can respond with support, or I disagree, but it's okay that I disagree.
Yeah, I just keep hearing, listen to understand, and then use your voice to be understood.
Right. So Stephen Covey principle.
Yes.
Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Absolutely.
Stephen Covey, great guy.
Yeah. So over here, I'm just going to read some comments because some really great ones are coming in. Richard says, I hate when people dehumanize those they disagree with by name calling and demeaning them. Absolutely. And that in and of itself is going to get us nowhere in any relationship, in any country, in any city, right? If we aren't trying to really look at we talk about this all the time, right? Like look at the problem and find a solution together using everyone's creativity and all of the perspectives is what's really going to solve that and help bring resolution.
Right.
I think another point that has just been kind of sitting in on my heart while we've been talking about this idea of really listening to understand instead of just to kind of know what's going on and like pack all your ammunition like while you're listening, right?
Yep.
Like you're listening so that you can like be chalking up your talking points instead of like really listening to understand what's going on. Brings us to what we talked about in our podcast last week that I'm still in the middle of uploading and getting out to all of you. But we ended up kind of coming around to being advocates. In our conversation last week on the podcast. And so that just keeps coming in as well as in this place of using your voice and listening to understand and then speaking in order to be able to be understood is finding those areas in your life that you're passionate about, that you can really get in and start to make a difference in your family, in your community, and using your voice in that way will really also, once again, empower you to be able to know that you are heard, right?
Yep.
And I think that there is power in finding your tribe, right? And building that community so that you have those places where you know that you're heard, but also that can start to lean into some groupthink sometimes and really not be as clear of a perspective of ourselves and of our, am I making sense, Steen?
Yes.
Of our outreach and the way that our message is being heard and the way that our voice is being used in order to be able to really progress and grow not only yourself, but once again, your family, your loved ones, your community, our nation, the world, right? Like start at the macro and take it micro and take it to the macro.
Well, and I think you're leading to the point that I think you're saying is this is diversity. And this is why diversity is so critical in our country and in our world. And in our communities. And when we resist diversity, when we squelch it, when we criticize it, when we mock it, and we shut it down, unless it's our diversity, that's one thing I see a lot with people is if it's my diversity, then it's okay. But if it's your diversity, then it's not okay. And when we run into this thinking, then we lose perspective and we lose solutions and we lose ideas. And then what happens if I'm just hanging around people that are all telling me what I want to hear, then we don't find new answers, new solutions. We don't understand that there are people out there that are a minority that aren't being heard or represented because nobody wants to speak out or speak up. And the contrary to that is that then people that are speaking up and saying, well, I don't agree, are criticized that they're stepping on the minority. And so we get into this. This has been the battle all year long, is going back and forth. But that's because, and this is the last part, I know we're almost out of time,
Wow.
but that's because we're thinking in extremes, people. You know, instead of, and this is the biggest battle that we've been going through in our nation right now, is we're extremes. We're one way over here fighting one battle, and we're over on the other side of the page fighting the other battle, but nobody's really listening.
Yes.
And coming to the center. And, you know, yes, I love strong opinions and I love strong opinion debates, but sometimes we've got to stop the defending our position, identify what the issue is, and really start to solve it. And that's what we're voting for.
Yeah.
That's what we're voting for. And so hopefully we're all getting engaged and we're all voting and we're all getting in to a point where we are supporting who we believe is going to bring solutions to the table,
yes,
instead of divisions to
yes,
the table.
Yes, yes, yes. So get out there and vote and use your voice.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for liking and listening. We appreciate everybody's chiming in. So as always, thank you.
Yes, have a wonderful week, and we will see you next time on
Monday Night Live.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.